Some might say otherwise, but Singapore might just be the best place for me to retire in. Here's why. I have been spending some time researching on the possibility of relocation recently. I followed the channels of many Singaporeans who have relocated overseas to retire, and I wondered whether it is something that my family could look at. But after much research and thought, I am probably going to stay put in Singapore. Here's why. Safety. Singapore is safe. I feel safe going out even in the very early mornings or late at night. And this is not something that many countries can offer. Singapore is far from nature, and this will be quite controversial. Many people I know want to be close to nature, but not me. And I suspect that many of us actually don't like raw nature, but rather a human curated nature. When I was young, when I look at photos of nature like mountains, rivers, and so on, I thought I loved nature. But my experience at OBS, Outward Bound School at Pulau Ubin, totally changed my perception of nature. I realized I didn't enjoy sleeping in tents, eating food cooked over campfire, and being exposed to mosquitoes for hours. We also did kayaking during that trip, and after some time, I was just looking out at similar looking scenery and I just wanted to be back on land. Out in nature, it is subjected to the elements of nature like rain, hot, wildlife, muddy grounds, and so on. And I suspect that many people do not really like nature because at the end of the trip, most of my friends, including me, couldn't wait to go back to our city. I almost forgot about this until I went glamping overseas. When I booked my glamping trip, I thought it would be great to be close to nature on an almost uninhabited island. But I forgot my fear of nature. There, the air was great, the scenery at eye level and above was fantastic. However, there were many worms around, which is normal because I am the intruder. I am at the worm's habitat. In fact, before I entered my dome, I was actually welcomed by worms and hermit crabs. And inside the dome, especially at night, the number of worms actually increased. We even had sprays provided as part of the stay because this is the norm. And while it was a great experience glamping, I do enjoy watching the stars at night and looking right out into the beautiful sea while I was inside the dome. The fear of worms climbing on me lingered around me throughout. And I was glad I only booked this for a single day. So while many cite being close to nature as a reason for relocating, nature is definitely not what I am looking for. I'm actually pretty scared of nature. While activities like shopping or restaurant hopping does not really interest me, I do enjoy going to man-made nature look-alike places further away from the raw elements of nature like wildlife. And Singapore does offer many of these, like these ones here. Singapore is safe from many natural disasters. Yes, we do have flash floods and we do feel the earth trembling, but the scale is not as great as what many countries have. We don't get typhoons every monsoon seasons, and it is not like some countries where it's a matter of the number of typhoons they get each year instead of having typhoons or no typhoons. And yes, while we can prepare for many natural disasters like typhoons, which usually have adequate warning for you to prepare for, basically just stay inside a well-built structure. But there are some natural disasters where you probably just have a few seconds to react, like earthquakes. We can read all about what to do during an earthquake, but during a very strong quake, you just have that few seconds to be at the right place and do the right thing. And if I could, I'd rather not have to face this. And Singapore does offer that. Weather is something that many people talk about in Singapore as a con. Yes, I do not like to sweat and it's really hot and humid. In fact, I've just bathed and I am now sweating. But there are some pros of Singapore's weather. Because it is humid, my skin does not crack without any lip balm or moisturizer. I remember going on a work trip to China during the winter time and forgetting my lip balm. My lips crack and bleed on smiling. Singapore is hot and humid, rain or not raining. That's it. The weather is probably not life-threatening if you forget to read the weather forecast before going out. And while most Southeast Asia has a weather like this, not many places offer the option to abandon the weather anytime, anywhere. For example, if it is blazingly hot, then you could actually have the choice to go somewhere air-conditioned to fight the heat. There's probably a public place or a free place that can provide relief from the weather, like a library, shopping center, MRT stations, community centers, and so on. In Singapore, and being a local has its advantage. If I need cash and need to work, there are actually options available because I'm a local. For example, to be a Grab delivery driver, you can apply and start delivering as long as you are a Singaporean or PR above 18. And if I want to look for a full-time job, this is also a place where I do not need further paperwork to look for a job and start working because I'm a local. Singapore is expensive, but the government does step in to help. Also, because of free trade, we get access to overseas markets and buy at a price that we envy others in other countries after paying for shipping. When I was a student, I remember buying the cheapest highlighter I could find at the bookshop, and it was around $1. And I remember that the school bookshop is typically cheaper than the other bookshops. I had no brand preference or whatsoever. I just wanted the cheapest highlighter. And that was more than 20 years ago, and bought a single highlighter at around $1. Recently, I bought my daughter some highlighters online, and it is some fancy gradient highlighter at about $2 for 4. Because of the openness of trade here, we are actually benefiting. If we can wait, we can bypass the more expensive items in the store and buy online from overseas. Adding in shipping, we probably have more options and at much lower cost. Singapore has a stable government, and it allows us to plan ahead without fearing sudden political changes and new laws that might threaten our property rights or dramatic changes in taxations. There might be changes in policies, which is a norm because we need to evolve, but most policies are rolled out gradually and let people plan for it. Like the goods and service tax increase was announced way in advance and rolled out gradually. I like the tax in Singapore. My main source of income is currently from interest from bonds and dividends of Singapore equities. Occasionally, I do sell my stocks, and there are no taxes on dividends or capital gains in Singapore. And I get to keep whatever income that is being declared from these bonds and equity and dividends from this equity. I also have some income from Udemy, and because I'm earning relatively a low amount, I pay almost no tax. Let's talk about healthcare. My family and I have our medical insurance all based in Singapore. We probably get the best medical coverage here because of how we have planned our insurance. After exploring all these factors, I've come to appreciate what Singapore truly offers. It may not be the cheapest place to live in, and yes, the weather is hot and humid. But when I weigh everything that matters to me, Singapore just makes sense. And for now, my family and I will be staying in Singapore.